Yeah, I'm losing my edge.
Foreign exchange futures and options, Pete, this is a very large conversation that we're going to reduce down to like 10 to 15 minutes. Foreign exchange markets, I've been saying this for years now. It is a cult market. You used to be a member of this cult. You haven't drank Kool-Aid in years, though. You're a part of all parties now. You're trading equities and everything else. But Pete, you talked a little bit about this yesterday, and I want to even go a little deeper on the confusion that foreign exchange as an asset class at large can yield. You talked a little bit about stepping into the wrong pit yesterday. Maybe you can speak to the levels of traditional foreign exchange markets and how cultish it seems, one, and how just intimidating it can seem to a new trader. And then I want to walk people through what the small exchange is offering and what we're offering here on the network as some potential trades and something to lighten the load. But what was this like? What was the pit that you walked into that was so intimidating back in the 80s?
You know what? It's funny. It's something that most brokerages don't even list anymore, but the Swiss franc pit. And it was, like I said, it was the guys throwing around 200 lots. The market would move 100, 150 points in an hour. And I'm sitting there with my little trading cards and my hands were shaking so bad. And, we talk about, is paper trading valuable? To start to get engaged with the product, yes. But I sat outside that pit for a year I worked as a clerk, doing my little point and figure charts, these manual charts. And I was like, I got this thing pegged. I know exactly. Yeah. You know what? You got it pegged until you actually have to make a trade and you're going to live it. And that's where I was tapped on the shoulder. Now, the Deutschmark, which has a very synergetic trade, or had, like the euro does, with the Swiss franc, much slower moving beast,
Okay.
A lot more liquidity, much bigger, country in terms of trade. And it was right next door to the Swiss. And that was where the very kind man named Bill Shepard, who built a huge...
Oh, wait, you know Bill? I'm kidding. I don't know who that is, but continue going with the story.
But he was a legend in the trading community. Tapped me on the shoulder and said, hey, Pete, this is not the right place for you. But you know what? It even when we look at the existing futures that are out there on Euro, Swiss, Canada, and Aussie now, my career started in the pits. I moved off and did cash market trading, arbitrage between futures and spot markets. So we had a very involved process of trading between the futures and then using spot markets to create professional arbitrage opportunities, nothing you and I could do now. But what you learn very quickly is even within the confusing world of the way currencies are quoted in the existing futures world, the spot world, for the most part, quotes them in the opposite way. And what I mean is there's always two currencies in a currency quote. It's US dollar versus Canada, or euro versus US dollar. And half the time, one market quotes them one way, the other market quotes them the other. So just that world flips you upside down. Then the eccentricities over the way you look at the quote. And if you take a look at the yen quote right now, euros are trading at 121, 1.21. The yen is 0.00, and actually Tastyworks drops off two of those, 0.00009661. How confusing is that? So we always talk about how do I do the trade. We know new product that is independent in terms of the way it moves and its occurrence is powerful for diversification. Sure. What's the lift in adding that new product?
Yeah,
when you look at those prices, that's the first of a lot of different lifts.
It's intimidating in a lot of ways, Pete. And I was just in the midst of writing the article for next week's Small Exchange newsletter, going out to subscribers and going out. It'll go out on social media and everything. So
I heard that was done before the haircut. No? Go ahead. Sorry.
I didn't quite get it in before the haircut, but yeah, I was likening going into future to foreign exchange markets to a Christopher Nolan movie. I think you like Christopher Nolan movies,
Very
but
much.
like Inception and Dunkirk. And it's like, it's one of those movies that's like, it's a really good movie, but it's one of those that I hate because people are like, you got to watch it, 3 times to understand what's going on, really. And it's like foreign exchange is like, you have to really be there for like weeks and months before you figure out what the hell's going on. And we at the Small Exchange said, enough with that. That's ridiculous that you should feel intimidated walking into the 2021 version of a trading pit, right? And so we created product to remedy that, so that you can go for, I know a lot of people going from paper trading to trading real products, which we always say, and it's a cliche for a reason because it's real, that when you go from paper trading, you could be the biggest genius on the paper trading platform. When you go and you enter those first real trades, it's a whole different ball game. Okay. And it's the same thing as Pete. He's writing all of his strategies down, and then he steps into that pit and they're like, easy there. You got a lot of ground to cover before you can actually get acclimated. What's great about the small exchange, Pete, is we try to make that, right, that lift from paper trading to real trading, or, from strategizing and reading about an asset class to actually trading it. Whatever your transition is, we want to make that as light and as unintimidating as possible. And so we have here the small USD futures that it's just US dollar. It's priced against 7 currencies, 7 of the largest economies on the planet here. And all you have to really worry about are US dollars moving higher? Are they moving lower? And if you've read the news, you know anything about foreign exchange for the last 12 months or so, you know that this US dollar has gotten hammered. Okay. It's actually right now sitting around multi-year lows unseen since 2018. And this, to me, Pete, is one of the simplest things, right? Like, because when you Google foreign exchange and you maybe pull up a foreign exchange trading platform, or you start to look at foreign exchange prices, it's like you said, it's like, okay, I'm looking at euros trading in US dollar. Now I'm looking at yen trading in euros. Now I'm looking at, like, I get lost there. And it's like that first time you see Inception, yep. It's like, is he dreaming? He's in a dream within a dream?
Which buildings are turning which way? Absolutely. And you know what? You make a great point, Frankie. That we always say, and one of we built as a line, not just to promote, but to and again, Frank Caberna patented line, take your strategy, take your ideas to execution and make it simple. I've got an idea. I take a look at this extreme, take that idea and put it to execute. Don't have to pick a currency, don't have to deal with an odd price convention and a differing tick size. And you know what? And I don't mean, I love CME, and I spent 30 years there as a member, and I cut my teeth there, and it was very good to me. But you know what? Products need to evolve. And if they don't, you will lose traders. And that's what we're seeing, is that the trading community there keeps shrinking because of the size of the products and the complexity. Yeah. We see more traders now trading product actively than ever before. Yeah. Technology has facilitated that. Product will facilitate that. And that's product like this. So take the complexity out of the equation. And you're right, that idea, that simple idea of not having to become a master of running down the rabbit hole. Because I have 2 FX books on my shelves that were fantastic reads, and I've been asked so many times, what's the book I should read? They're the 2 best books on foreign exchange. One's 310 pages, one's 420. That doesn't make them bad, but the complexity that they go into is so unuseful for you and I and the rest of our traders that I can't even in good conscience say, take a look at this.
Every time we recommend like a book, for me, it's usually like, oh, what's the best book on options? Because I came up in math theory, and they're like, what? They want to read about theory. They want to read about option theory and all this different stuff. And, I disagree with our mutual friend, Tom Sosnoff, on a lot of things. But one thing that I will always agree with him on is,
he appreciates that.
He loses sleep sometimes.
He is a man who loves that.
But what I will agree with him wholeheartedly is, like, I've read those books, and those books are useful if you're like interested in the topics. But what you learn in one day of actually getting in there and trading something like foreign exchange is so much. It's worth 10 different books, right? Because reading those books, how the contract is structured, the contract structuring doesn't matter when you go in there and you buy or sell a contract here. So yeah, you don't need a book to read a book to get into this product.
And Frankie, we told that story about me in the pits. And so the Swiss franc moved 150 points a day. That was anywhere from a $2,000 to $3,000 move. The D-marks, where I went over, Deutschmarks before the euro combined all those currencies, moved 30 ticks a day, which was $350. So what did that do? It was still a big product, but the amount of movement was consumable. What that let me do is learn. That's what we want to do, is empower people with products to give you the exposure you want, the unique set of occurrences and movement. But I need time to learn. That, time is our enemy. Oftentimes time is our friend when we're selling premium. Time is our enemy when we're trying to learn.
Absolutely. No, and that's a good point there with this SFX is, I want to advocate for people jumping in there and trading and what you learned in one day of trading. But what you learn in one day of trading, those big traditional products could be your last day of trading. Thankfully, these SFX futures that small exchange, they are small, move about $50 a day. So a great place to start. Okay. Now, where I want to go from here, we're doing here, and I'm totally stepping on the article that I wrote that'll be published next week. What we're doing
you
here,
can't get enough Frank Caberna.
What we're doing here, Pete, is we're creating a Christopher Nolan choose your own adventure movie. Okay, you start out with the SFX. It's one character, all right, and it is beat up. It is low. Now, maybe you want to buy this thing at its lows, but how can I get long this SFX at those lows? Without just sitting here and being like, oh, I hope it goes lower. Well, it's not at the lows that we saw a couple of weeks ago. Well, now, Pete, we can add a couple more characters to our adventure. And this goes back to what you said about how you love the CME, which is a strange thing that you love a company full of inanimate objects. I don't understand how you love that is weird. Maybe you talk to your wife about it, but you add some characters here to
maybe I can rent your team for a couple of days, but let's go ahead. I digress.
Don't advance your if you want your Christopher Nolan movie to be Leonardo DiCaprio, he goes into one dream and then he wakes up. SFX is a great place to start. You want to build another level on there. You want to go dream within a dream. We're going to add something like the euro, the yen, sterling, British pound there, or the Canadian dollar. We're going to look at some options on this as well. It is starting to get super Tenet and Dunkirk in here. I understand that. And if you're confused already, just turn us off. But I have now put out a couple of different strategies that you could line up with the long USD, the long SFX trade there that could get you long US dollars below those lows of a couple of weeks ago.
Right.
Here, how you're going to do that? Selling put spreads in the euro, yen, pound, or Canadian dollar futures options. And so, yes, you're adding characters, but you're learning and you're actually theoretically reducing risk. Of course, the dollar could go lower and euros could go lower as well. But since our dollar is priced in euros, yen, pounds, and Canadian dollar to a different extent, depending on the weightings of those, you are offsetting risk by longing the dollar and longing these other currencies via the put spread. So what I have here, Pete, is a trade for each of these different futures options markets that should get you today around $100 in credit. And if you watch this a couple of days from now and these strikes are no longer relevant, basically what I did is I went to the SFX futures and I just got one long futures position in there. The margin should be around $200. You go into these futures options here, and I'm creating the tightest spreads. You see all of them are half strike wide spreads there. And I choose where I short there, the short leg, before defining the risk a half a strike wide, depending on how I can get around $100.
Right.
I'm just looking for $100 credit here. That's a good chunk of change to attach to one SFX future. I'm looking at the March futures options.
Why do you pick $100, Frank? You talk a little bit about that because how it's sized in cost basis reduction.
Sure. So the small exchange futures, for the most part, are priced so that they move between $50 and $100 per day. So when I get $100 in credit against my long SFX, I have, in theory now, given myself about 2 or 3 big down days against me. So I've given myself some breathing room. And going back to the chart here, I am now long. If the market's trading at 143.5 like it was today, I'm now long at about 142.5. That's below those lows of about a week ago. That's how you get long at cheaper prices. And so now what you can also do here, Pete, but I hate doing this, is go to the foreign exchange ETFs. And this is part of the reason why we created the US dollar futures from the small exchange, we wanted something that feels comfortable to new traders, like an ETF share or ETF options. The problem is these ETFs are very illiquid in terms of their options.
Yeah.
And they're just really slow moving because you have a foreign exchange market that is not screaming off the page with volatility. And then you have a market like ETFs that aren't efficient with their margining. So I'm putting up for, a naked put or call or buying or selling shares. I'm putting up a big chunk of change for the amount of movement I'm getting. So I would much rather live in this world. But if you want to start out with the ETFs, no problem. These are a couple of a different choose your own adventure plot lines for your first foreign exchange trade.